that fun? Just talk about taxes. So, you're watching Public Affairs. Berkowitz is my name and politics is our game. And we will be doing politics this evening because we have as our guest State Representative Mark Beaubien, who knows a lot about politics, a lot about public policy. He's been in the state legislature for 13 years, going on 14 years, right?
It's really 13.
13 years.
This is my 13th year.
This is his 13th year, and he is, of course, a state representative. It's the 52nd district. It includes a bunch of areas. What would we say? North of the North Shore, basically, and northwest.
It's northwest.
Yeah. All right.
Northwestern suburb.
He has been a lifelong resident of Lake County.
Correct.
The last 36 years in Barrington.
Correct.
Which is a part of the 52nd district. His professional career has been involved with and divided between law and banking, politics and public policy. Northwestern grad, both as an undergrad and then law school. Active in the Alumni Association there, is that right?
I have been, on and off, yes.
Okay. Married to Dee for the last 40 years, two grown sons, right?
Yeah, 44 years, but 2 grown sons, yes.
Did I say 44 years, but who's counting? And so make a note, in 6 years, that would be the 50th anniversary.
Correct.
Big show. That'll be a big celebration in 6 years, right here in the studio. We'll invite Dee in, you in, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, sure.
And all your friends when the 50th anniversaries come up. 4 grandsons, right? Grandchildren.
Grandchildren.
Sorry.
2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons.
Very gender neutral there?
Yes.
All right, so State Representative Mark Beaubien, a lot of people, we're taping this on March 15th. As we tape it, a lot of people are talking about the speech, it's the budget speech that Governor Pat Quinn will be giving to the legislature on March 18th and to the state of Illinois. And pretty much people are saying Pat Quinn will raise the income tax or propose an increase in the income tax from 3% to 4, 4.5%, 5%. People aren't sure as we tape. As you watch this in the suburbs, whether it's the Chicago metro suburbs or the city of Chicago or Aurora or Rockford or the surrounding areas or perhaps throughout the state of Illinois on the Illinois Channel or on our website, as you watch this, most likely it's after the speech.
Yes.
So tell us now, March 15th, Representative Mark Beaubien, what will Governor Pat Quinn propose for the increase in the income tax?
He gave a speech before the IEA recently, and he indicated he'd go to 4.5%. That would be his request.
So that's about a 50% increase?
It's a 50% increase, yes.
From 3%?
Yes.
So if people were paying $6,000 in income taxes with some slight adjustments, most likely they'll pay $9,000 roughly, right?
What do they
50%.
make?
If you're paying $6,000, you go up. But he's going to have expanded exemptions.
Right.
So his idea, he's saying that for families making $57,000 or less, they will not face an increase in the income tax. People with families with an annual income above $57,000, they will have an increase. That's what he's saying.
That's
right?
what he's saying. That's correct. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I assume his people have, and that's probably an accurate statement.
The Republican Party, and specifically Matt Murphy, state senator from Palatine, has been speaking out broadly against tax increases, I think.
Yes, he has.
And I think Senator Christine Radogno, the Senate Republican leader, has been speaking out broadly against increases in the income tax or the sales tax, I think.
That's correct.
And state Republican leader, the state house leader, Republican state house leader Tom Cross, what has he been saying? Has he been speaking out broadly against increases in income tax?
Well, first of all, our caucus is such that he doesn't tell us how to vote. He expresses his opinion, and I think he believes that a sales tax, gasoline tax, or income tax is something that the vast majority of the caucus would not support.
An increase in the sales tax?
No, not at all.
Or an increase in the motor fuel tax?
No, absolutely not.
Or an increase in income tax?
Correct.
He's saying he doesn't think the caucus will support?
Well, there probably would be members of the caucus, depending on the final package. We don't know what he's proposing. What we're looking forward to is, first and foremost, let's take advantage of these difficult times and do some things we need to do, such as revise the pension system to a 2-tier system, get that done and behind us. I think we need to have changes in our health care. We have far too much supported by the government versus the individual participant. I think we need to make some Medicaid changes. We're looking forward to seeing what they're willing to do in that area, and also what cuts he's proposing. An article today indicated that he was talking about $500 million this year, $830 million next year. I suspect that's not going to be enough satisfy the average member of the General Assembly.
Say that again about the cuts.
He's talking about offering forward cuts in the speech of $500 million this year out of the current budget.
Cuts in what?
Well, he just hasn't
spending
said.
of
Yeah,
$500 million.
Yeah, and then $830 million next year in 2010. The governor was kind enough, and I think professional enough, to at least begin to share some of his thoughts in a broad sense. Within the last few days, we've met with their deputies and the head of the Governor's Office of Management Budget, and in a broad sense indicated the things they might want to do. And I think it's very helpful, so you don't just walk into the speech and have something thrown at you. And I think they'll probably have a meeting that they will have a meeting on Tuesday, late in the afternoon, and really kind of get out into the specifics so that when we have our opportunity for our staff, they'll be up all night reviewing it, and putting together gap points, stuff that we can read and look at, et cetera, for the speech before it happens. So at least we'll be prepared to talk to the press and the media, so we'll have a little bit of a heads up. And I want to thank the governor for allowing us to do that.
I'm not sure what the answer was back a few minutes ago when I asked about Tom Cross. What is the position of Tom Cross on an income tax increase?
He's not for it.
He's not for it.
No.
And is he saying the Republican caucus is not for any increase in the income tax? Is he saying that?
I think he expects the caucus to listen to what he's saying. Are there members of the caucus who would consider voting for it? It's possible.
But he's trying, you're saying Cross's effort is to, as much as he can, have the entire Republican House caucus vote against an increase in the income tax?
No, that's not the position.
That's not his effort?
No.
What is his position? It's a matter of conscience?
It's a matter for each individual member. We've never, since he's been leader, gone to the caucus and said, you have to do this, you have to do that.
Does the Republican Party have a brand problem? You know the name Grover Norquist?
Yes, I do, but I can't think of...
He's a national guy in D.C. He's got these, I think, Wednesday morning meetings. And he has said nationally the Republican Party brand should be a party of tax cuts, not a party of tax increases, a party that opposes tax increases. He says the Republican Party kind of fell off the wagon. And nationally, when they came in with their contract with America, that was their creed, but then they fell off the wagon and they started pushing for at least big spending, if not for tax increases. Various states, you have Republican governors here and there and legislators also being for tax increases. Norquist's point is the Republican Party no longer has the brand of being the party opposing tax cuts. And does Cross have to take a stronger position to establish that brand in Illinois?
I think when he speaks and he's before groups, he does take that strong position.
That he's pushing to keep the Republican Party the party opposed to tax cuts, but he's not pushing each member in the State House to say, I'm directing you to do it.
We don't do that.
Does Speaker, and the Speaker, Mike Madigan, who also happens to be chairman of the Illinois Democratic Party, does he differ, or does he push his Democratic caucus members to take the position that he wants, whether it's for or against an income tax increase?
I think he has a stronger control over his caucus than most. Whether he has absolute control or not, I don't know. I'm not in that caucus.
Okay, but he has more control.
I believe he does, yes.
And you, Mark Beaubien, have you taken a position that you would oppose any increase in the income tax?
My position is, as a budget negotiator, to stay neutral on all of the items. There are all kinds of things that are going to be on the table. Taxing the pensions over a certain amount, video poker, license plate and fee increases, and cigarette tax increases, many, many items. There's a list of about 15 or 20. I think you have to look at the whole package. What I would like to do is first of all, we started out with this number of 11.5. It's gotten quite pregnant. Last year we passed the budget, I said we'd be $7.2 billion in the hole. They thought I was ridiculously high. Well, apparently I was wrong. It's obviously much higher than that. What that number really is, I don't know. I can get to about $9.5 billion. Some of the stimulus money, one of the tranches or the funding is for education. That money can then be taken out of used for education, and then take money out to go to the General Revenue Fund. That's a concept. You can tax video poker. That'll bring in $500 to $700 million. You have to look at the whole package. And what I want to find out is what the real number is. Is it 7.5, 9.5, 10? What the cuts are going to be? What money can be used in the stimulus package? And then find out what the real number is we have to work towards.
When you say you can get to 9.5, are you saying, in your view, the minimum deficit is 9.5 billion?
Yes, that's my opinion.
Could be higher, but it's
Dan Hines issued a report recently that if you take the 2 years together, I think it was pretty accurate.
If you take the 2 years together, you get what?
Well, but the deficit we're going to have this year, plus what we know we're going to have to go up next year, such as I think $800 million in Medicaid, you've got $1.2 billion in pension payments. You've got a whole list that's going to add up to
what?
About 9.5.
Plus that counts, so that's saying this year's deficit and next year's deficit total to 9.5. It's not saying 9.5 a year.
No, it covers a 2-year period.
And that's when you say 9.5. That's what you're talking about.
That's where I would personally start, but I look at the same figures.
Just assuming we don't know, but assuming it's roughly equal, that would say about a $4.5 to $5 billion annual deficit, right? $4.5 to $5 billion annual deficit. And if that's the case, do you think you could find spending cuts such that you wouldn't have to raise any taxes?
You can't cut your way out of this deficit.
You can't.
No. You have to have prison guards, you have to have state police. I mean, the government does have to function and run.
So you're saying there has to be an increase in revenue, but that could be covered in part by driver's license fee increases, other user fees, right?
Correct. There's a whole list of the amounts.
Is it conceivable you could do it, in your view, without an increase in the income tax or the sales tax?
I think it's possible.
Okay, with those other revenue enhancements, as they call them. And is it desirable as a Republican, as for whatever philosophy you have, Republican or not, do you think it would be desirable, as we're in a recession now, to try in any way possible to avoid an increase in the income tax? Why? Why does that matter?
I don't think this is the time to be raising taxes in this current economic environment.
Well, how is that detrimental? Or is it detrimental?
It's like the gasoline tax, sales tax increase, income tax increase. It's going to hit everybody. And this is, in this economic environment, increasing the expenses for a family 50% more for their state tax it's just not the right time. I think generally people throughout the country are saying this is not the time to raise taxes.
What about the point that Quinn makes, though? He's saying with these he wants to increase exemptions from, I think it's $2,000 a person, personal exemption, to $6,000, right?
Correct.
So that would mean a family of 4 would, instead of having $8,000 in exemptions, they would have $24,000.
Correct.
$24,000 on which they don't pay an income tax.
Correct.
So Quinn's contention is if your income is less than $57,000, under his tax increase, you won't pay an increase in taxes, income taxes, right?
I believe that to be the case. I haven't done the math, but I believe it to be.
Some would say, you know, everybody should have some skin in the game.
I totally agree with that.
People on the federal level had said with incomes of less than $50,000 don't pay any federal income tax. They don't have any skin in the game. That's not good. You agree?
I totally agree.
All right, so you would would you oppose those expanded exemptions that Quinn has in mind?
Got to look at the entire package. And again, I think what concerns me is that you look at the numbers. They've used a static model. They've taken the numbers that comes in from corporations and from individuals, and they said, well, they're going to assume if you raise it 50%, you're going to get this much additional revenue. It's not going to happen. First of all, the calculations were done on the idea that people would get an $8,000 exemption. Now they're getting a $24,000 exemption for a family of 4. I'm not sure that the numbers come out the same. And the other thing that
What do you mean the numbers come out the same?
Well, the numbers that were projected to raise the money was based on 3% and having the 5% apply to everybody under the old rules. I don't know if you increase the exemption to $6,000 a person, you're going to get that same so-called $4.2 billion in revenue. The other issue I have...
You'll get less because of the exemption, and so then...
The exemption and...
Then what do? You need to raise the tax even more on the higher income people?
Well, under our Constitution, you can't really do that. And I think there's some constitutional issue that if you do what he's proposing, it might be unconstitutional because it isn't a flat tax at that point.
And that's the estimate that people use, that you use when you're dealing with budgets. A 1% increase in the income tax would result in a $4.2 billion increase. I
think they're also
in revenue?
It's about $3 billion for individual and about $1 billion for corporations, something along those lines.
1% increase in each. So if you raise
no, I don't know what the corporate
$3 billion. So if you go from 3% to 4% on the individual income tax, your estimate is that raises revenue for the state of Illinois $3 billion. Is that what you mean?
Correct.
And if you raise, is the current corporate income tax 4.8%?
Yes, but keep in mind...
And if you raise, just one thing, and if you raise that 1%, you get how much?
I don't know, because I don't know those numbers.
On the corporate level.
Here's the concern I have about corporations, and I think this is where I think they're going in the wrong direction, and I think Blagojevich is going in the wrong direction over the years. Attacking business and making this a state where you don't want to do business is a mistake. Blagojevich demonized business for 6 years, constantly beat them up, saying they're not paying their fair share. I have a feeling this government's going to come along and say, let's raise it, I don't know, let's say 2.5%. I don't know what the number is.
So it drives businesses out of Illinois?
Well, it would be the highest corporate tax state in the country. Do you think that's going to encourage people to expand their businesses, to come into the state of Illinois?
So it kind of then, and when you do that, fewer businesses, then you get less revenue, then you come back and say you have to raise the corporate tax even more. It kind of is.
I think if they put themselves in a position of being the highest corporate tax state in the country, and they may be second or third, I don't know, which is already, by the way, rated consistently in internet groups. We're rated near the bottom anyway. You add this to it, we'll be dead bottom. And these corporations, they look to move. They look at these sites and they say the highest tax, our real estate taxes are huge. And there's been nothing in this program to help reduce the real estate taxes.
Now you said you want to look for other ways other than raising taxes, but you declined to, you wouldn't take a pledge that says you won't under any circumstances raise or vote for an increase in the income tax or the sales tax, right? You wouldn't take that pledge?
I'll take the pledge I won't do a sales tax. I'll take
not raise the sales tax.
But as budgeteer, I've got to remain open. And I think the minute you do that, you walk into the room and they say, Beaubien is against everything. I want to see everything on the table, look at the whole process. Am I against tax increases? Yes.
Do people want to look at legislators and say, what's your income? Are you affected by this? You know, last week we asked Senator Garrett that. What was her family income? So we got some information on that. If people ask you that question, what's your family income? You willing to answer that?
No.
How come? Don't you think that people are entitled to know, as your constituents, for ethical reasons, what your income is going in, family income, family net worth, and which is coming out?
I think that's a complete invasion of privacy. If my wife works, she works all the time. She's a volunteer.
She does work.
She's a volunteer. She's not paid.
She's not paid.
If she was, she'd be making a lot of money.
So it'd just be your income then?
It's just my income.
So why shouldn't they know? You're the state rep.
Well, no, actually, she has half my assets, so it's.
So you're saying you're willing to disclose your income other than, would you disclose your income other than
no,
for
I don't
you
think
personally?
It's anybody's business. People know that I have a great deal of money. That's not a big secret.
But federal level, they do have to disclose that, don't
they? Correct, yes.
And do you think that doesn't make any sense on the federal level to disclose that?
I think the papers love it. They demonize these people and they talk
about it.
It's
not because take the simple case. Somebody comes into the legislature, they don't have much net worth. 20 years later, they leave with a lot of net worth. Can we deduce possibly that maybe they did something, you know, that the public should want to know about?
I would think you should have asked President Johnson that. You ought to ask President Clinton.
Lyndon Johnson, you're saying maybe made some money.
He was born on a log cabin. He never had a job in his entire life other than being in public office.
But you're giving an argument for why people in office should declare their net worth.
I'm not president, I'm not a U.S. congressman, and I'm not a U.S. senator.
So as a state representative, don't you think you have the kind of power to do things as a state rep?
I would say that anyone that knows me in my district knows that I have a significant wealth, and which brings up the whole other question of.
So, but why, if they all know that, why would you be reluctant to disclose it?
I just don't think it's anybody's business. They know what I make as a state legislator. My wife has no income other than through our investments.
Despite the fact about what we said about Lyndon Johnson maybe making money on the side, don't you think it would be easier for the media to detect this and do something about it? That would be why it's public business. Do you think?
I think
because you're a public official.
I think when you get down to the level of state government asking individuals to disclose their personal income, unless one of their relatives works for government, or they themselves work for government. Many of the state legislators out of Chicago have city or county or park district, water reclamation district jobs on the side. I think the public needs to know that. I have no such thing.
But you know, Senator Garrett disclosed that last week. You say she disclosed more than she had to, you think?
Whatever she did, she did. I'm not going to tell her what to do.
All right. But you wouldn't like to see an ethics law that required you and all other state legislators to disclose not just your income, which people know from the state legislative side, but your income from outside the state legislature and your spouse's income. You wouldn't like to see that kind of law.
I think if you could craft it such that if a member of your family is a lobbyist, if a member has other government jobs, your wife works for the government, you see all that type of stuff.
So only in those instances we do.
Yeah, I think a private
So Dick Durbin's wife, is she a lobbyist?
Yes, she is.
So that you're saying she should disclose what she does and the income she gets.
I think people know she lobbies.
Should she disclose the income she gets because she is a lobbyist?
She may or may not, I don't know.
But should she? Should there be a law that says she would be somebody who, on the federal level, we're entitled to know what she gets for lobbying?
I know
you were saying
it's a federal issue, I'm not going there.
On a state law, if there's somebody who's lobbying who's the spouse of a state legislature, should they be included in the kind of people who report income? Good. Okay. All right.
See, one of the concerns I have is they're now talking about an ethics package, with limited contributions. And what concerns me is that people of great wealth can run. Those candidates, they may be good candidates, but just don't have the funds to run, and they can't raise the funds because of all the new restrictions. It's unfair to the people of the state of Illinois.
So like if the federal law does that and you're saying that's unfair, Peter Fitzgerald can spend a lot of money to get him elected on the federal level as he did. Everybody else has to go out and get it in $2,300 chunks. Right. You're saying that's unfair. They should be allowed to go out and get it if they want 10,000, 20,000, whatever.
Right. They'd need to disclose it. I think that's
disclose it.
Yeah, they're one of the immediately, by the way. So you can track the legislation and the signing of the bill to when the check came in. So you have to court within 24 hours if it's 5 or 10, whatever number.
So that's one thing you would change. One thing that happens in the state of Illinois right now, disclosure is
every
over 6 months.
Yeah.
You would like to see it every 24 hours?
Within 48 hours after you receive a check, anytime during the year of 5,000 or 10,000.
Put it up on the website.
Put it right up on the website and file immediately.
You drafted legislation to do that for the state of Illinois?
I think it's being drafted. I think.
Would you come out and sponsor that?
Yeah, but I think it'll be an overall omnibus bill, and I'll probably be supporting it. I don't know what they're trying to come with. The problem I have with ethics reform is if you close one door, another door opens, as with the 527s?
But you slowly make progress. I heard free market people make that argument, and they may be right, but you do make progress. We do know more than we knew 5 years ago about state legislators, even in Illinois, as a result of the disclosure laws. They can find ways to circumvent and so forth, but we know more. Broaden that to 24 hours instead of 6 months, we'll know even more, right?
Yeah, in large chunks, not when you get a $150 check, but if you get a check of 5,000 or 10,000, and the curious thing is how closely they're attached to votes that you're making.
Why not everything? Why not everything over $200? Disclose it in 48 hours.
It's an effort. We're not paid to have staffs to sit around and do this thing every day.
Oh, so you're saying that takes some time, and maybe that's
I've got to get it to first of all, my staff doesn't do it, but I have to get it to the person that does it.
As long as the same person isn't circumventing the law by saying giving $5,200 checks, that would be illegal under your schematic, right? Because
that's exactly what they do, and that's why I say open door and close another. Yeah. You have a party in this state that can go to trial lawyers and get, I don't know, $200, $300, $500 checks.
The Democratic Party, you're saying, can do that, and they can get it from
teachers'
unions.
So that's bundling.
They can get it from teachers' unions, right?
Same kind of concept.
But Republicans can get it from corporations, so it's not like they're pure, right?
I'm not aware of corporations that are giving out that kind of money, at least to me, I can tell you.
But you say Republicans don't have any sources to get money?
Sure they do. They work very hard at it, much harder than...
All right, so going back, Senate President John Cullerton has talked about the General Revenue Fund, which I think he says about $28 billion, $30 billion, is that right?
28 is a good number, yeah. 28 is a good number.
He says, look, most people don't realize $11 billion of that money goes to education from the state of Illinois. $11 billion goes to health care, and $6 billion goes to state operations, which includes pensions. Cullerton's challenged Senate President to those folks who say, we'd cut. Where would you cut? Health care, education, state operations. He seems to imply that's really the three major areas, if not only areas, to cut. Is Cullerton right on that, Senate President?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you look at the pie chart, and you've got your $6 million here, just a small sliver, it's the others, the human services and the education that cost money. If you're going to make any progress, you have to go after that. Will that happen in this state? Highly unlikely. Well, if you had to, if you're a business person, that's what you would do.
Explain this to us, to the viewers, and me. The total budget for Illinois is what, $60 billion?
Right.
Or 60, is that right? Or 65?
It's a good number to start with.
$60 billion.
I always like round things out.
Okay, well, what's the difference between that budget, the $60 billion, and the 28 that's in the GRF? Is there $32 billion elsewhere out there that can be cut?
A lot of it's federal dollars.
Some of it's federal, a lot of it, okay.
The motor fuel tax fund goes into the road fund. Other federal money does not go in that fund.
So the difference between the $60 billion and the GRF?
And bonds. You've got bonds that you've sold. You haven't.
Interest on those bonds comes in there.
Interest on,
so it's not discretionary, is what your point?
Well, in order to spend money on a capital project, you have to appropriate it.
Right. Okay.
So a lot of that appropriation is to rebuild, whatever highway.
So is it fair to say there's only $28 billion to focus on if you're cutting? There's not $60 billion.
Correct.
Okay. And out of that 28, let's do that game. We did a little bit with Susan Garrett. Let's see if it's any different when we do with Mark Beaubien, whether it's a party, regional, or other difference. Take that $11 billion that the state of Illinois right now is spending on education. John Tillman says there's a lot to be gained there. If you had charter schools, lifted the cap on charter schools, you could have that you could get the same quality of education, perhaps even better, spending less. I don't know whether his number would be 10 billion or so forth.
Mm-hmm.
You agree with John Tillman on that?
I do. We've had such strong resistance in the state to charter schools. I think the only way to improve education is to have competition. You have competition by creating charter schools.
Okay.
This constant resistance by the powers that be to this, I think, really hurts the education system. I think if you had more charter schools in the city, you'd have better education.
Would you favor lifting the cap? Right? Is the cap right now 45 across the state of Illinois?
I don't have any idea.
I think it's, or maybe it's...
There is a cap. And
there's a cap.
Yeah.
I think it's 30 in the city of Chicago, but I confused myself whether that counts campuses
Education
or
is not my strong suit.
But there is a cap.
Yeah, there is a cap.
Would you favor the state of Illinois saying no caps, whatever people want in charter schools they can have?
I think you've got to ease into it. I mean, I think just a blanket.
No, but should the state legislature, shouldn't that be a local decision? If Chicago wants to have more charter schools, they can. If they don't, they don't. Why should the state of Illinois say to Chicago or downstate or the suburbs, here's the maximum level of charter schools you can have? Why should the state of Illinois play big daddy on that?
I'm not sure. I don't believe that they should. But
okay, so lift the cap. Would you say you're in favor
either
of
that or lift it in stages?
Okay. Time has gone so fast, we're going to continue to speak as the credits roll, but I very much want to thank our guest, State Representative Mark Beaubien.
Thank you.
We'll have to have you back because we've just touched the surface on this.
Touched the top.
All right, so you can save money on education following John Tillman, the Illinois Policy Institute. Could you also do that on health care? Could you cut back on Medicaid with more managed care?
Here's the problem with Medicaid. Apparently, and I don't have the final call on this yet, apparently, under the stimulus package, you can't change your existing Medicare payments. We have mandatory payments, and we have a huge amount of optional payments, a great deal.
But you could have more managed care, you could manage
go to more
manage
managed care. But there are people that are, I think, scholars, certainly not the majority, but many that think you really don't save that money much in doing it.
Brady says you could save $1 billion or so, maybe $2 billion. I think even it's Kirk Dillard, a colleague of yours, two colleagues of yours, Dillard and Brady. You agree with him? $1 billion, $2 billion? You don't know.
I just don't know the answer.
You ought to talk to them.
I don't think that I need to talk to either one of them about what's in the budget.
You think you know more than they do? I mean, you say you
I'm not going to get into that
talk
either.
with them. All right, what about pensions? Make them define contributions, not define benefits, for at least for future employees?
The problem
you could do that, right?
No, you can't, and I'll tell you why. Our pensions, let's say, are 55% funded. We're relying on the new employees to pay into that system. If you take them out of that system, all that income from new employees is going into the defined contribution plan and not into the state plan. We're relying on the new employees to put money into.
But you're also getting much substantial liabilities for future payments out if you're obligated to make defined benefits to them as opposed to defined contributions. You see the difference? But you don't favor that change. Because
I don't think
sounds like Cullerton does, Madigan does, but
it's fine to verbalize it. But as an economist and a budget person, we can't do it. We can't afford to do it. We're relying on the money coming into the old system from the new employees.
So are you telling me, focusing on those three areas, you don't get big savings, you're going to have to favor raising the income tax?
No.
But you're not going to raise the sales tax. You're going to have license fees that total to $4 or $5 billion.